and I am so excited today to talk to my boy, Jordan Lanfair, who is going to talk to us. I couldn't even, y'all, it was hard for me to come up with a title for this one because when Jordan and I talk, we jump from one thing to the next thing. So this episode is just basically Jordan knows all, how to get us revolution ready. So thank you so much, Jordan, for joining us. And can you just hit them with your credentials real quick so they know what you're working with?
My name is Jordan Lanfair. I have an EDS from National Louis, a master's from Concordia. I have a bachelor's from Knox College. I have been an educator for 9 years, and now I'm the manager for academic and social emotional support for the Golden Apple Foundation. So I am attempting to recruit, train, and retain high-quality teachers that serve in schools of need. I've got publications, podcast appearances, but one of my greatest joys is I am Patty's son, I'm Mimi's daughter, and I'm Keisha's adopted little brother. So those are the things that bring me pride.
I think we're in a precarious position right now because people have failed to ask the questions for fear of not having an answer. And like, what are we really saying then? That dialogue isn't important, that we can't coalesce just even around like difficult conversations. It's like, that drives me crazy. When
it comes to that idea, so like, I think the way that we use the term in popular media is wrong and stupid, but that does come into cancel culture, right? It's this idea that like, if you don't have it now, you're done. Mm-hmm. Okay, well, I don't have it now, and I didn't have it when I was younger, but it doesn't mean I can never have it. And there was, I don't know if you remember, Barack had a statement where he was like, I don't believe in that. He's like, you need to call people in. Like, how are you going to cancel them? Because then you completely cut off all of their potential. Now, this doesn't mean that if somebody's really being foul and really being a problem, that you don't need to sever that relationship at least, but then it is somebody's responsibility to say, like, we have more resources, more time. But it's also this idea, like, I don't see how I have people who are prison abolitionists who are also cancel culture believers. I'm like, those ideas are the exact same.
Completely polar, like that. They're exactly a polar end to the spectrum. So I was on a call with some people from Canada, right? And I don't know why they just seem like light years ahead of us in terms of like their work with DEI. Like, I'm like, thank God there ain't a wall, because I'm running over there if this election don't go how I want it to go. But they just get it, right? Like they get it in ways, and I'm not saying that they're not still in process, or all still in process, but they're getting it in ways that we don't. So I was talking to them and just trying to also just educate myself on other aspects of DEI and ABAR stuff. And they were telling me, they're like, Keisha, well, I want you to really think about and ground your work in the fact that for some people, equity feels like oppression. And I was like, I had to sit on that for a minute, Jordan. I was like, wait, yeah. Like, so this feels really oppressive to some people. And they're like, and how are you going to reach them? Right? Because that's the goal. The goal is to kind of call them in and reach them and pull them, like pull that humanity, pull that empathy out of them. And I was like, yeah, that's really changed my perspective. It really has.
I don't know. So let's push on that a little bit, though.
Okay, talk to me.
It definitely does. But is that on us to placate them? Because then it's on the people who are consistently suffering to stop pushing, right? Just because you're uncomfortable doesn't mean that I have to stop demanding my equity. And it, like, everybody loves to bring up Martin Luther King quotes. Okay, let's pull up a Martin Luther King quote.
But they don't know Martin.
They don't know Martin.
They don't know Martin.
So what did Martin say? I may not be able to change the sheriff, like the sheriff may not like me. He don't have to, because I'm going to change the laws that make sure that he can't be the sheriff anymore. So you can go through your periods of discomfort. You can go through your periods of searching and learning and all of this. But if at the end of that, you're just like, oh, but I still don't care. Okay, if I can't change you, if you can't change your perspective, guess what I am going to change? The laws and the procedures and the forces that let you be in power.
Right. So and that is ultimately systemic change is like where we need to be. When I say that, I'm thinking of not in terms of like my relationship with folks. I'm thinking about my business. I'm about my money. So if I'm leading a training about equity, I have to think about, okay, I have to think about my audience, right? I have to think about part of my audience, regardless of what I present to them, they're going to be thinking about this in terms of, in the back of their minds is, this doesn't seem like equity to me. This is oppressing me. And so how am I trying to in my presentation, deliver a deliverable, right, to my client? How am I reaching that person when that's the only thing that they have in their mind? So that's what I'm thinking about.
You got to take them on a thought exercise. So I did this on, I was doing a group with Volumes. We were doing a book club. And I could see we had some people who were getting it, but they weren't getting it, right? And so I challenged you. Like, I challenged them. I was like, here's what I need you to do. There's this idea that marginalized groups are good at fiction because we have to imagine a world where these things don't happen. Okay, it feels like oppression right now. If you're a woman, what would it feel like for you to be able to just walk down the street, like not being harassed? If you are a Latinx person, what would it feel like to not have to see negative depictions of yourself on the media? So if you can identify these things, you're participating in an act of science fiction. You're participating in an act of brainstorming, of idea generation. And so if you can understand it in that theoretical sense, I need you to merge that feeling then with this discomfort and realize that that world does exist.
Exactly.
So the question is, the reason you're in this training then is, how do we make that reality that you just lived in your fantasies, in your science fiction, in your brainstorming, how do we make that actually exist?
Yeah, that's good. I knew it was going to be good when you said it, but yeah, that's really good. And I think what it also does is in that imaginative exercise, in that space, you're visualizing yourself, right? So you're also tapping into that element of self and that selfishness that is inherent in all of us, right? Because in order for us to relate to others, we first have to relate it to ourselves. And so I think that that's the power of that exercise too.
Yeah, it's like, once you go on this exercise and you see this world, where are you? Right? Okay, as a man, there was I'm sure you saw the post too, because somebody put, like, I asked all of my friends who identify as women, what would they do if there were no men? And they were, walk down the streets with my headphones blaring, or walk down the streets without headphones and all this. And so then the next step of that for me then thinking was like, okay, so that only assumed we were gone for a day. So now that they've rediscovered this comfort, this freedom, when men are put back into society and they explain this to me, how do I receive it? And then what is my role in making sure that they're able to maintain those feelings? What behaviors do I need to change in myself? What behaviors do I need to challenge in my friends so that someone is telling me, when you were gone, I felt safe. Okay.
Do you think most of us are ready for that level of introspection though? Because that's what I'm finding. I'm finding that people are resistant in some levels to, like, I feel like we act out of self-motivation versus really thinking about other people and like how I impact others.
Yeah, I think it's this, one of the hard parts about it is you have to acknowledge that if someone comes to you and tells you that, it means that you have hurt people, inadvertently or inadvertently or not, right? But also, then you have to examine behaviors, right? Where did I learn to hurt people? Where did I learn that this is, a problem? And then you've got to look at the people who raised you, who taught you, and say, this person that I love taught me something that hurt people. Oh, crap. And so in that sense, that's also where that selfish nature should kick in.
Yes.
Oh crap, I was taught things that hurt people. Did this negatively impact my life? Maybe I didn't get this because I was carrying this baggage. Maybe I was limited in this way because I have these views. Selfishly, how could my life be better if I embrace this idea, right? If that's the selfish nature of it, okay, I used like insensitive language or whatever, and I was just cracking jokes in the break room and I didn't get a promotion or whatever. Like, let's just, because that's what everybody always thinks.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, maybe that's true. Maybe you were using language that hurt people, and these folks that you think have no agency, no authority said when it came time for people to be elevated, to be promoted, to be pushed forward, that's not somebody who represents us. So why don't you do that work, be someone who represents us, and grow? We've given up.
Exactly. So, okay, so you talk about this impact that you had this summer. That
the people had.
No, no, give yourself some, take some credit where credit is due, because you acted, and you galvanized people. So that's.
I am, because we are, and the reason I really want to push back and say it is because I had Fannette Jones, I had Edie Ramirez, I had Aurelis Armis, I had Ceci Flores, I had so many wonderful Black women. I had Jen Jackson, I had Tamika Hardy, and I feel that whatever the inception of the idea is, we are always willing to give the men in an organization more credit because it's just easier for us to interpret. I could have done none of that without them. Fannette was the one texting me, like making sure, hey, this is how much money we have. This is how much we got in today. This is what you're working with. Aurelis and Ceci. Aurelis took care of all of our graphic designs. Ceci was coordinating our volunteers. Edie was handling our social media. So yes, I will give myself credit for being able to put together that team of phenomenal people. Tamika and Jen had food handler experience. And so to watch two Black women hop into a space and say, look, you all don't know how to disperse food. Wash your hands, put these gloves on. This is how we do it. That's an experience I don't have. So
I love you, Jordan. I love it.
We talk about MLK, but we don't talk about Fannie Lou Hamer. We don't talk about all the Black women that held these things together. And I think
they were the glue. They were the glue. And I think we still are the glue.
You are, but I saw something today that it just hit me. It's like Black women are so often focused on, but never centered. And I do not want to be centered. I want to center the Black and brown women that carried this.
So how did you get there? Because so my husband and I often have to, he feels the exact same way. So it's like, I'm kind of like, I'm talking to him through you. So how did you get to this point as in your hotepery? I'm sure you didn't learn that. So where does that come in?
I don't think you can be for Black liberation unless you realize that what we're actually working for is not to replicate the system that hurt us. And the system that hurt us is patriarchal in nature. And I read Pedagogy of the Oppressed, and that formed so much of my education. But then that also became the lens that I viewed things through, right? And so then you're adding like Black liberation ideology, you're adding Bell Hooks, you're adding Angela Davis, you're adding Audre Lorde, you're adding Toni Morrison, you're adding Ralph Ellison. So like Invisible Man is one of my favorite books, and a Black woman destroyed my thinking with one question. Just like, but who was he invisible to? I'm like, because you all have never been invisible to us. So that whole book, this seminal text, this amazing book that has helped shape so much of my thinking, is all about him being invisible to the white gaze.
Yeah.
Because we have never been invisible to Black women. And the second somebody gave that to me and said that, I'm like, you are right. So it's like
that's good. That's good.
right? Like these amazing things that we focused on, how much of it is because we want to be recognized by the white gaze, when in reality, we are seen, we are validated, we are cherished, but it's by the very people that we're willing to harm so that we can move closer to patriarchy. We want to replace our oppression with the oppression of other people, and we do that by doing the exact same thing that white feminists did to black feminists. By once they got their right to vote, we threw them out.
Bye-bye. Yep.
And I can't do that. Like I can't look my daughter in the face and say, hey, I had an opportunity to be a better man. And I get it. Everybody's like, oh, do it because you want to. I do want to, but I'm very cognitive that I am my daughter's standard for how a man should treat her. And I cannot look her in the face and say, Daddy had a chance to be a better man, to learn and think and do better. And I was like, yeah, but
I'm out for self.
Yeah, I'm out for me. And so, sorry.
I'm glad that you have done your work. You have said it's part of your work, because my Marcus and I believe like part of our work is the work of going to see somebody, therapist. We call them coaches, because we feel like that is like, you're coaching me through some stuff. And so do you think that that's part of it?
I know it's a part of it. And they are therapists. And I say that because I want us to also normalize Black people. That go to therapy. Yeah. We get depressed. We get scared. We get anxious. But people don't let us. It's like,
but I let me push back on you. I use the word coach because I also want to destigmatize what it is to go to therapy. Like all it is really is somebody coaching me through my own issues so that I am a better person in the end. So
but I don't think that's a push. I think there's different forms of it. Because some of us need therapy. Some of us have been hurt.
Yeah.
Some of us have been set aside. Some of us have been wounded, and we need to go and let it all out. We are not even to the coaching part. Yeah. Parts of my journey, I am at the coaching part. Parts of it, when I open it up, it's like, ooh, this is still raw.
That's true, because I think about me 4 years ago. That wasn't coaching. That was just a raw emotion that I needed a healing space. Yeah, that's a good point, Jordan.
You can't coach somebody that is still raw and
broken.
Wounded. Yep. Yeah. And it's like, I need to let this wound out. Like, I need to air it out. And did you see Watchmen?
Yes. Now, I did watch that.
Okay, so we won't give nothing away, but he says you can't heal under a mask.
Yeah.
Wounds need air. That is what therapy is.
Yes.
Wounds need air. So before you can coach through it, heal it, you gotta open it up. And we are so taught that like, oh, you gotta be stronger than this.
You gotta hide your wounds. You gotta hide those wounds.
Until we break.
Yeah.
Until we can't find joy or love or peace anymore. And you're like, I don't want that to be my life. That's not a life.
Why don't more people do their work though? Because I think that's an easy thing to say. I think that's hard for us as Black and brown people to unpack the layers that exist. And I think it's hard too, Jordan, because when we think about unpacking that means going back to that generational trauma, and like also that trauma that exists in our DNA, some of which is like completely unconscious to us.
But I also think it has to do, so my roundabout way of saying this is, I was given a very stereotypical male upbringing, and I tell people, I was raised homophobic. The growth and work that I had to do, I don't know that we give people the space to be wrong in that way anymore. And it isn't to say that some of the things I did weren't harmful. I know I hurt people, but at the time, I didn't. I know I hurt people looking back at my life, and in reflecting and having done my work, I'm like, oh, okay. I see how that hurt someone. I see how that was the wrong thing. Someone checked me on this and I have to change the behaviors. So now a grown man sitting here, I can see that. At the time, it was raw. It was rough. It was wrong. And I
How did
think
you get there though? So how do you get to the point where you see like this is wrong?
I had people who called me in and I had people who called me out. And and I had to be open to it. And it was kind of those like, and not even open to it because the call outs, they were real. The thing was, it was like, how are you going to say that like you want to be a class speaker? How are you going to say that you want to be a class president? You want to be this and you use this language? Absolutely not. How are you going to engage in this work and you have these biased views? I'm like, oh, I'm not thinking about this. And it forced me to go learn because no one was my learning experience. So those were the heavy hitting ones. The subtle ones were just as, hey, we don't say that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Here's some alternative language. Yeah.
They're like, oh, okay. Yeah. And then once people started changing their language around, you realize like, I think that's the thing. It is because we've been hurt for so long, we often are not afforded the luxury of assuming that people are making innocent mistakes.
That's good.
Like, and that's really what I came to say. And I think like we try to frame it different ways, but I'm like, someone who is consistently put down for being a part of the LGBTQ plus community can't assume that I am making a harmless mistake because the stakes are too high.
Exactly.
But depending on where I've come from, it is a harmless, like I literally sometimes don't know. This is the language everyone around me use. And you can say, well, you should know better, but no one around me knows better. We don't live in that, like, you should do better.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like, now, of course, once I know better, once people show me better, if I choose to not do it, then give me all the smoke. Like, I'm asking for it at that point. But I think because we live such public lives now, because we put everything online, because we want everyone to see us, you're like, okay, you are wrong in public.
Yeah.
Now. Like, I'm not just wrong around a few friends. I'm wrong to thousands and millions of people.
I think what you said resonates with me too, because it's about environments, right? And it's about like putting yourself in environments where people think differently and act differently. Because if I'm just in an environment where everyone is kind of the same and has that group think, then nobody's challenging me outside of that norm. So I'll give you an example. Marcus and I had become religious zealots at some point in our lives. And like somebody hit me over the head with a brick because I never want to go back there. But religious zealots, and only hung out with religious zealots. So when people would say stuff, and I'm like, oh no, the Bible says this. And it's like, and it wasn't until I expanded my environment and those people who are around, and I was like, wait a minute. And like really like people challenging my intellectual thought. And I'm like, yeah, that doesn't make any sense. That was really stupid. And in saying those things, I was really hurtful. But while I was in that space of zealots, I couldn't see the forest for the trees.
I mean, I was a hotep. I'll tell y'all plain. Oh yes, my sister. I was
a friend's brother.
Hotepery. But it came from a place of, and so like that's the thing. I think in trying to help people too, I look at what is the nugget that got you there? Because that's where it all starts, right? Yeah. Like underneath some of this like fanaticism, there is something that is like good and pure and true.
Something that drew you to it, right?
And so for me, it was low income Black kid, South Side. I understood my neighborhood being disenfranchised. And so you're looking for answers. And so somebody comes and says, well, you understand, my brother, that the reason that, you know what? Oh, okay. And you should read this book. Why does book don't have an ISBN number? Because they keep the truth from you, my brother. Okay, I'm gonna read this book. And I'm impressionable, and you're questioning, right? You're questioning. But you're like, okay, parts of this make absolutely no sense, but some of it does. Okay, let me read books that I'm still interested in. Okay, there are parts that, so like that's the thing. It isn't that they change the documents and the information that's there, right? Like it's the reason we still run around.
You part of it, right? It's only
right.
part of it.
It's why we still run around talking about the Willie Lynch letter like it's the Constitution and real, even because the sentiment is real. Because like, so that's what people glom on to, even when you tell them, we can't prove that this existed.
Exactly.
Can't prove that this is a real thing. The argument is always, but tell me the sentiment is wrong. It's like, okay, you're right. But this thing that we're talking about doesn't exist. And so like that was kind of the thing. And so it was like, why all these DVDs come in the bootleg man sleeves? What? Okay. I mean, I just have questions.
Yeah, they're trying to coerce your mind, brother.
You see, my sister, that's the thing. We just so used to getting our information diluted.
Yes.
But that is another thing. And, you know, we're both educators. So I think the question then becomes, what is education? Because we are both afforded a certain ability to read and think critically. I have friends who still walk that Hotep line, and my arguments for like, and literally my arguments to them are rooted in like that this thing is disproven by like medical research. This thing is disproven. They're like, but see, you're getting your information from them. It's like, and I understand what you're saying, but this contradicts that. It's like, but it doesn't.
Exactly. It's that partial information, or like when your only source is YouTube.
Mm-hmm.
Like it becomes scary. And so you brought it back to education. And I think that's really important, because I think what part of the problem of our current public school system is that all students get taught this master narrative. And this master narrative is often popular, but incorrect story. And in order to perpetuate this master narrative, we have to create these false narratives around our students of color in order to reinforce, like I was just telling somebody, like we are a nation of immigrants. Well, that's the master narrative. Who does that disenfranchise? The indigenous people, the Africans that came here as slaves. We are not just a nation of immigrants. That is to render people vital to this country invisible. And so our students are getting these master narratives. That's also kind of hotepery, because it is like that incomplete information.
But I'm not an immigrant. I'm stolen property.
Exactly. And you're making me invisible by saying that. And when we say that, then we have to come up with these false narratives in order to undergird that, right? So it has to be like, oh, well, the indigenous people were savages, or the people or the property that was brought over isn't considered human. So we all are still immigrants, because that wasn't part of the collective community.
I think it's an interesting thing, because you know, you ask, how do we make this a part of people's self-interest? If I'm a person of the dominant group, that history doesn't help me either, because it doesn't teach you persistence. It tells you the world was always yours. You had manifest destiny. You moved west. Everything went great. But so then what happens when they hit these roadblocks? And it's like, oh, well, I was told that all of history culminated in me being successful. You never give them the actual stories of like, no, you were Irish.
Exactly.
Your people had to fight. And when you were like, rather than push back and accept you as Irish, you were assimilated into whiteness, put in proximity to whiteness, put in opposition to blackness and brownness, lost your Irish identity to become American. Right, so you gave up something. You gave up a history.
What's that melting pot? When that pot was melting, guess what? Guess what died in the fire? Your individualism.
But that melting pot is interesting, because it was only some people that were in that one pot. We were on the other side.
we were stoking the fire of the pot, like for real.
We were in our own pot. What happened was, and I think this is always interesting, Black people were cooking in their own pot. Latinx people were cooking in their own pot. They served us all on the same meal and said they didn't like how it tasted, but if they mixed just this little piece of it in, I could take a little bit of these greens and put it into this and it tastes great. Okay, so then maybe next time I'm going to put a little bit of greens in mine so that it looks good, so that it tastes good. But I don't want the whole thing. They love to, like, people love taking bits and pieces of our culture. People love taking bits and pieces of Asian culture. People love taking bits and pieces of Latinx culture. They don't want the whole thing, though.
No, and we know, because as people of the global majority, we understand that that there's an element of power that resides in me for having being able to endure and to thrive. Not only just endure, because I don't like that, to be able to thrive in circumstances that see me as less than. So I think it goes back to what you said. It's that it's valuing that perseverance that they see in us, right? And that ability to overcome, and not just overcome, but make it good. Like, make it good. Make it good.
You remember Lupe Fiasco's Hood Now?
Yes.
That's what I'm saying. Like, it's that whole idea. It's like, okay, they gave us the scraps of the pig. We seasoned it on up. We made it good. They gave us this little bit. We made this out of it. And it's like, okay, well, why can't we break you? Because, baby, we can't be broken. Now, we can be hurt. And I think that's the thing, though. Earlier this year, when we were doing a lot of the food giveaways, and just at the height of the movement, there was something that hit me. And, I go to therapy, and I told my therapist, like, something that I realized hurt. We never really talk about the low moments that our leaders had. We never talk about, like, it took us until we were adults to find out that Martin Luther King had dirt on him, that Malcolm X had dirt on him, and not like baggage, but like these human things. It's not even dirt. It's like they came home and were like the day I found out Martin Luther King wanted a gun, I was like, excuse me? It's like, but it makes sense. How many times are you going to beat me, blow my house up, attack my family, and I'm just going to let it happen? And so you're like, we never talked about the bad days.
Well, we wanted to make this idyllic image because because there was so much. I mean, think about even this move, this respectability politics. Like, we wanted this idyllic image because we have seen so much negativity in our own images, and to present someone as sparkling and clean was what we felt like we needed, instead of just a man.
Yeah, like, even
a great man.
Yeah, even respectability politics was revolutionary at some point, because it was like, all you want to show of us is this. No, I clean up well too. What is your argument for denying me this when you tell people that I can't look good? But I'm thinking, when we took those human moments away from our leaders, it's why I follow the Nap ministry now. I follow a few people that are like, rest is revolutionary. And I'm like, oh, but like, all we ever talk about is, we got to go. We got to keep fighting. Your ancestors fought for this. Your ancestors died for this. I'm like, my ancestors also rested for this. My ancestors also laughed for this. They danced for this. They cried for this. And when we don't give ourselves that, we burn out and we get so depressed, because we're like, why do I feel like I'm just constantly fighting? It's like, okay, they kill somebody. Let's hit the streets. Okay, now how do we teach people about this? Okay, now how do we redesign the curriculum for this? Okay, now how do we keep going? How do we make this next thing? How do we prepare for the next movement? How do we prepare for the next thing? How do we keep going? And that's dehumanizing, because then my entire life is built in opposition. My entire life then is waiting for the next bad thing to happen to my people, and it's robbing me of a life. And
Black joy is resistance. Black joy is resistance.
Black joy is resistance. Black love is resistance.
Yes, Black laughter. Yep. And so, let me, because you just said, you took one of my questions. You done took a couple of my questions. You said something that, so on Twitter, I've been seeing this raging debate about, I am not my ancestors. What are your thoughts about this? Are we our ancestors, or are we
And
not?
not my ancestors, okay? Because my ancestors are way tougher than I was, sir, okay? Like, I apologize for ever thinking that I was my ancestors. I tell you something. Do you watch Lovecraft Country?
No, I haven't.
Okay.
I've been asking Mark. This is a plea to Marcus, everyone, to get me some movie channels so I can watch it.
Look, we'll
Or,
have to.
or hook me up with your code.
Yeah. So on Lovecraft Country, first episode, this is not a spoiler or anything, but the bus breaks down. And of course, they were going to the north, and our main character is sitting in the back with a black woman, and the bus breaks down. They're like, all right, don't worry, the truck will be here for everybody. All the white people got on the truck, black people had to walk. Now, excuse me, because that is real. So my ancestors, if the bus broke down, even in the north, were like, all right, well, let's just go ahead and get these bags. Let's walk these miles to Chicago. Like, excuse me. I get tired walking to Whole Foods. And you need to tell me that I would have to walk 20 miles to Chicago, and I best not ask for help. I am not my ancestors, because my ancestors put up with things that I've never even had to think about. Now, that said, I also don't think I'm my ancestors' wildest dreams. I think that's narcissistic. I think it's simplistic, because I think that my ancestors would have had far greater dreams than me. And that isn't to say that I'm a letdown, but it's my ancestors' wildest dreams would have just been to be happy, to be safe themselves. And if they knew that I was still sitting here, that isn't their wildest dreams. If they knew that, like, I still have to worry about being shot by the police, that their great-great-grandson still wakes up in terror every day, I'm not their wildest dreams. Now, if I'm assuming
That's good, Jordan. Wait, hold on. That's real good. Like, you gotta slow that down. So to think about, like, our ancestors are like, they're like, wow, you've taken it this far, but guess what? There's still more to do. There's still more that can be accomplished. Yeah, I hadn't thought about it that way, because I love that. I am my ancestors' wildest dreams, because I think of it in the sense of, like, some of them made the choice to jump or to stay.
Mm-hmm. Even think about our kids. My wildest dreams for my daughter is not to just be able to get by. My wildest dreams for her are to be able to play in a park, and if she wants to roll around in the grass, saying, I'm a dinosaur, no one thinks anything of it, because that's the world she lives in.
Yeah, that's good. What about the opposite? Thinking about that in terms of the opposite? So there's the shirt, like I'm not my ancestors, meaning, like, I will jack you up, like I'm 2 minutes off your ass, basically.
Yeah, that is minimalist, because but it comes back to that narrative we talk about. We sanitize our ancestors, because by that argument, I'm not my ancestors, that means you're not Huey. That means you're not Bobby. That means that you're not Nat. That means that you're not all of the black people.
And it means that there's some of their forms of resistance, even the people who aren't those big names, like, because my grandmother cleaned somebody's kitchen or was somebody's bed nurse, that she wasn't resisting in small ways, and that those acts of resistance aren't valid today.
Exactly. But I'm like, in the context of what they're trying to say, right?
Yeah.
So, like, you're bringing a whole other aspect that these short-sighted shirts and stuff aren't even bringing to it. It's like, okay, so let's take that. You want to talk about violent resistance. Okay, cool. Our history is full of people that means that you're not Joseph Sinkay, who was like, you know what? This whole boat mine.
Yep.
It's like, excuse us? Nah, Amistad. This whole boat mine. That means that all of these things, all of these resistances, all of these times when we just said, I'm not doing it.
Yeah.
I'm not my ancestors. I'll throw hands. Our ancestors threw hands, and they threw hands at a time when, look, when they were on postcards getting killed.
Yep.
Now I'm not saying that we're not being publicly displayed, but what I can't do is go to the post office, buy a postcard of me being lynched, send it to my auntie and say, hey, it's great down here. We got to kill some people. That's what our ancestors were up against. And they still had the ability to say, you know what? not today. I just gotta punch him real quick. And even the flip side of that, if we talk about Black love and joy and solidarity being revolutionary, you're minimalizing the fact that somebody had to drive these cars. Like when we had the freedom movement,
Yeah.
when we had the Montgomery bus boycott,
Yep.
people still had to sell shoes to Black folk. People still drove Black folk to work. People still fed Black folk that had to do out there. People were making lunches. That is resistance.
Mm-hmm.
Holding the community together is resistance. So guess what? That's what I'm saying. No, we're not our ancestors, because like I'm not painting a hunky-dory picture like we didn't have divisiveness, like we didn't have competing ideas. But if I'm setting myself up in opposition to them, I've learned nothing from them. So you dang right I'm not my ancestors.
You did a lot of mobilizing work this summer. Can you talk about what you did and what led you to those actions?
So this summer, when the mayor decided to suspend food service in light of the uprisings for Black lives, we galvanized a bunch of volunteers, we received funds, and we bought food, we donated, and like, I almost feel bad saying donated because we gave it away. We were in the middle of the streets bagging lunches and giving lunches away and giving food to people, because we're talking about a pandemic that's taking people's jobs. We're talking about food insecurity. We're talking about some of the organizations that were giving out food, they weren't shelf-stable foods, which is another conversation we have to have when we do giving, because we were at some points trying to give people things that, hey, if you can't eat this today, you can put this in the fridge, it'll be good for a few weeks. You can put this on the shelf, it'll be good for a few weeks. Mm-hmm. And then we flipped it and we're also like, but Slice by Bronzeville gave us like 50 slices of pizza. Come on, because I know like it's hard. Mm-hmm. We need to hold the community together. So if that means we're going to get some pizzas, we're going to get some slices, we're going to give them out, let's do that, because we need to bring some joy back. And so we were really successful at that for a while. And I ultimately made the decision that coronavirus was, so we had a few volunteers test positive, and we're like, the good that we're doing, we could actually be setting stuff back, because if one person catches it from one of our events, I couldn't live with myself, because we're already dying at greater rates.
Exactly.
So we really
bringing it back to a community. Yeah, that is.
So it turned a lot of the efforts and energy into the book, and the book providing bail funds. And so every time I get the disbursement from Amazon, we're sending donations to Minnesota.
Tell about the book, Jordan.
All right, so the book, which I think I happen to know somebody who's in there. I think I know somebody. But it's called The Best We Could Do. Well, The Best You Can Do, sorry.
I'll link it I'll put a link in it for everyone.
Yeah, you do what you can. There we go. Yeah, The Best We Could Do is one of my other favorite books by T. Bowie. She's amazing. You do what you can, but it came from the Boondocks, where, Huey's talking to Granddad. He's like, Granddad, what do you do when you can't do nothing, but there's nothing you can do? He's like, you do what you can. And so, honestly, it was just, I was sitting with a few of our friends we were doing Feed the People, and I'm like, I'm mad, and I'm scared, and I'm sad, and I just want to write about it. Like, that's it. And I don't care how it comes out. Like, I can go back and edit it later, and so we did. And so then we're like, okay, cool, let's give this space to other Black folk. And so we did an open call, and we made sure to put on the poster, everybody's automatically accepted. Like, don't worry about it. You're not like, oh, am I going to get in? If you send it to me, you're getting in, because we're not a monolith. I want to know how you're feeling. Even if I disagree with the sentiment, I want it in there, because I want people to understand, as hard as this conversation is for you all to have with us, it's hard for us, because I don't agree with everyone, but I can't imagine the strength it takes to be a Black person that genuinely feels some of these things that are contradictory.
Yeah.
Now I'm going to say genuinely, because let me be clear. Me and Daniel Cameron are on site. I don't believe he genuinely feels those feelings of opposition to the movement for Black lives. I believe, and I've met people and I have people in my life that they did not have an experience where the police or other systems of oppression were outwardly hostile to them. So they are going on their own journey of learning what that's like, and they are attempting to reconcile it. And I empathize with that because I can't imagine what it takes for you to be that vulnerable and be like, that has never been my experience with the police. And I'm like, cool, I'm gonna hold that space for you because I can tell you what mine has been. So let's see how we got here.
Yes, and yes, like, so that's your experience. And I think what we have been fighting and asking for is a validation of our lived experience. And so to say that one person's experience is not valid really goes against the very premise of what we've been trying to do. So my husband made a great point. He was talking in a forum and he said, you know, I grew up on the South Side, Southeast Side. Like I existed in this ecosystem of all Blackness. So he was like, so really I didn't experience prejudice and racism as a young kid because my whole ecosystem looked like me. And everything that I needed was between the lake and Stony Island. So I didn't have to go too far to get what I needed. And I was like, oh my goodness. So that explains like a lot about him for me, because as a family, we moved and traveled a bit more. And so we did have more experience, but it explains him to me, but that's his experience, right? And not that he hasn't had it as an adult, he absolutely has, but like we have to allow people to exist where they are.
Yeah, and mine is very similar to him. Like I told somebody once straight up, the only white people I saw growing up were either teachers, and some of them were horrible to me because they hit me, or the police. But I'm like, and that's real because that was also, you could still hit kids in public school.
Yeah.
I know we're supposed to say that, but they shut up, pow. I'm like, okay, y'all mad about Common Core. I was mad about concussions, but
for real, the switch on the desk.
And we are not talking about Catholic school teachers. We are talking about CPS.
Mm-hmm.
But so, I mean, that was my experience. Like, I grew up on the South Side. I grew up in Black Mecca. I grew up down the street from Mosque Mariam, to be real. So the Nation of Islam, the mosque on 73rd and Stony Island, that's where I grew up. I grew up right down the street from there. So like people selling bean pies and Black people like having block club parties.
Morgan, you probably know some of my family. Like,
yeah, I'm sure I do. Yeah. Like I'm willing to believe that we've been in the same room and didn't even know it. But like that's my experience. So I'm like, I've always grown up. Oh, you such and such's cousin, aren't you? It's like, yes. So when I was in these predominantly white institutions, like when I went to college and I'm like looking for people, I'm like, oh, okay, well, where are you from? And the one that always got me was like, oh, from Chicago. Oh, bet, where in Chicago? Yeah. Elmhurst?
Like, dude, come on now. Come on now.
But it's that's a Chicago thing. That's a Black person thing too. Like I need to know, because essentially what we're asking, right? At least for
where our kinfolks. Where's our connection?
Not just where our kinfolks. What common experiences do we have, so that if something happens, I know I can trust you, because it's very different. Even if you're a Black person, if you tell me, I'm from Evanston. Okay, I know I can relate to you on some levels, but not others. Like, where are you from? Auburn Gresham. Okay, I know I can relate to you on some. But if like you're telling me, oh yeah, I went to Hyde Park High School, I went to, cool, we are here, we are from the same ecosystem. So if some things like start looking bad to me, I understand that we have the same point of reference.
Yeah, you just probably made half my listeners so excited by mentioning HBCA. Hyde Park Career Academy, shout out.
Hyde Park Career Academy. But see, like I went to Kenwood when Hyde Park Career Academy was dragging people off the buses, but it was like, Hyde Park Career Academy, Whitney Young, Diet, all of us, we fought each other. But I also grew up in an ecosystem where when there were other people though that pushed up, I knew it was like, okay, we have our issues.
Yeah.
But you understand that I can fight you.
Yeah.
You can't, they can't fight
exactly.
us. Like,
exactly.
And like
that's how we were. I went to Hyde Park my first year and then went to transferred to Morgan Park. And so Morgan Park, we could go at it with Julian and Corliss, but if somebody from Mount Greenwood came in there, we're like, oh, no, shut it down.
Mm-hmm.
Shut it down. So I understand him. And so when I say my kinfolk, I don't mean like, I mean that connection of like that Black connection where I could do my head nod and get it back.
When you tell somebody, oh, like, yeah, I'm gonna go to Choli's for pizza, and they just get it, you're like, okay, I understand.
Exactly. Give me some Italian fiesta on 71st Street, and
I don't want pizza if I can't see it through the top of the paper because the grease.
Seriously, it's not real, and it's hard to find now, Jordan. Okay, let me ask you about voters, Black men. In 2016, we stayed home, right? Like I think the Black vote was like 59% of us voted. And why do you think we didn't vote in 2016? And what conversations are you having around voter suppression and oppression of voice right now for this 2020 election?
All right, let's call this what it is. I'm tired of them just talking about, well, y'all stayed home. Okay. When you just throw a number up there, that works for most people, right? And this is where we talk about that critical media literacy. All right, how many of us rely on souls to the polls because we work full-time jobs during the week, so to actually take a day to go vote when you have long lines, I can't do. How many of us have irregular mail, or how many of us ain't living where we say we live in? Let's just be real about it, because of whatever situation. How many of us are homeless, and so we have no clue where we would even get it, or like transitional living, so I can't have a mail mailed to me.
Well, I think we have to be honest in the fact that there were a certain segment of us that felt disenfranchised, and we're just like neither one of these parties are speaking to me, and so I'm not participating in this.
But so what I also like, and we can get to that, but what I want to challenge is everyone's throwing this number up of how many of us stayed home, but we aren't like, I want to see where the number is of how many of us that were actually able to vote. And I don't just mean like enroll. I mean, how many of us that had adequate voting facilities? How many of us that had didn't vote? You know what I'm saying? Like, let's push that number a little further. If you really want to talk about how many of y'all didn't vote, we saw people standing in lines wrapped around a block.
In Georgia, yeah.
Are you mad then if I had to wait 4 hours and I'm like, I can't wait another 3? Right? Are you mad at me then? I did my part. I showed up to do my civic duty and I gave it everything I had. Are you mad then that the system did not provide adequate resources for me to engage in the democracy? How dare you? And I think the other side of that is, why are we carrying the burden of white people not doing their job? Let's get there.
Okay, so let's talk about that. Unpack that.
Because we can come back to us. So we can talk about our in-house stuff in a second, but let's
unpack that for me, because I agree with you there.
Let's put numbers to numbers. If all of us who were eligible to vote did our jobs, and if all the white people who were eligible to vote did their jobs, would we be in this position?
No, because let's just be honest, because we were still only 6% of the voting population. So, let's talk about
13% of the U.S. population.
So
maybe 15, 16 now. Last I heard, 15, 16 ain't a majority.
And let's talk about who voted against their best interests, against their own interests, and that was white women.
53. So I'm not deflecting, because I definitely want to talk about how we need to engage with this election, but I do want to frame it in a way that because I feel like we're going on a dangerous trend, and it's this. We are gearing up so much for this 2020 election, and athletes and our celebrities, everyone is doing such a great job that should Joe Biden lose, they are also preparing the mechanics to blame Black people. really look at it, they are trying to make voting cool. They are putting vote on every NBA game, on every NFL game. They are putting votes on things that they associate with Blackness and with people of color. And if he loses, they are also preparing themselves to say, well, we did everything we could to reach out to you all and you still didn't vote. Even though we are getting reports that there is still foreign intervention, that they are still suppressing voters, that they are still limiting, but none of that is going to matter because they're going to say, well, Beyonce told you to go out and vote. How are we still responsible for it when we did our job? So sure, maybe we definitely should have shown up in greater numbers, definitely. But how are we at fault when we still don't have the numbers, when we still have an electoral college that in some of the spaces that we live, we wouldn't have swung it?
Well, also, I mean, let's go down even more systemically. So, and my question was not to blame Black folks. My question was to say that I really don't feel, again, like what you said, like, first of all, we are a small percentage of the population. And also, who's talking about things that are really at the systemic level going to change life, everyday life for Black folk? Really not. There are not a lot of candidates out there doing that, talking about that level of advocacy for Black folk. So I go back to, and I would teach my students this, and they would be really shocked that, so in the state of Illinois, right, like you have a population downstate, and you get representation connected to that percentage of the population. Well, there's some places downstate that are heavily populated, but only populated. Why, Jordan?
Oh, because, that's where people decided to not be around Black folk, or that's where there used to be factories and things.
Yes. Or prisons. Our prisons, those people are counted as, even though they cannot vote, they're counted as in terms of representation for that community. So
I didn't think about that. Oh, snap.
Yeah, so they are getting representation in that community for people that are disenfranchised and can't vote. And so I'm like, there's some real problems within our system that we need to address before we lay, like you said, the blame at the feet of Black and brown folks, specifically Black folk.
But I think so. Here's the other thing: disenfranchised. Well, I'm sorry, you said disillusioned, and I want to come to that. We elected we elected our once in a lifetime candidate, right? And we talk about Barack Obama the same way people talked about Kennedy, that was our, if this is what a president is supposed to be from a human lens, this is what I imagined. Now that said, Hillary Clinton was the student that did all the work. Hillary Clinton was the person that you wanted her in your group if you weren't going to do work because you knew she would do your part. And how do we feel about that kid in class? And that's what happened. And so to ask, it's like we weren't excited about her. So I'm not excited about my vegetables all the time, but I like being healthy.
Yep.
And I think so here was the thing. We are looking at, we're actively watching the guardrails of our democracy crumble. And I don't even mean politics. I mean, our press isn't doing their jobs. Our institutions aren't doing their jobs, because when she said they are a basket of deplorables, people made her apologize, even though a bunch of us were living next to the baskets.
Yep.
And
but when he said it's a shithole country, he can say that. And
we held her to a standard that we've never held anyone else. And I believe the issue was I excited? No, but that's no shade to her. I'm never going to be as excited about a candidate as I was about Barack Obama.
Exactly.
It doesn't matter who it is.
And I'm going to go back to something you said, because it's not to say that we don't hold her accountable. Yeah, she needed to be held accountable, but she also needs the same level of accountability that we held her to is the same level of accountability we needed to hold everybody to, and we didn't.
Mm-hmm. But we held her to a level that we were no longer holding her to facts, because the fact that you say, oh, well, Benghazi, they proved that wasn't true.
Exactly.
And no press was calling him on it.
Yes.
Like, the press was meant to be the fourth estate. So when he's saying lies, no one's going, that's not true.
Yep.
Like, that's just not true.
Yep.
Like, I'm not even disagreeing with you. I'm not going back and forth. That is factually inaccurate. And you are distorting reality in a way that is harmful to the democracy. And so, like, I think in some ways, I understand why we're trying to make voting cool, but I also don't, in the sense that this is what I get to do. And I'm not saying that in like some holier than thou thing. I'm like, am I excited to vote? No. Was I excited to vote for Pritzker? No. But when I did all of my research, I was a Pritzker stan after my original candidate dropped out, because I realized the potential for good that he had. Am I going to agree with all of his policies? Absolutely not. And guess what? We have this idea that if my candidate loses, I got to pack up all my toys and go home. Our current mayor was not my choice. But
exactly, but I'm going to throw my support around her. And that's what I love what Chance said recently, that you're not going to get me to talk about this Black woman, even though she wasn't my candidate. Did you?
I did. I got my issues with her. But what I'm going to say is...
I absolutely have my issues with her.
Mm-hmm. But my thing is, when people are rooting for them to fail, you're then rooting for the country or the city to fail. And someone said it perfectly when 45 was elected. I can't hope for him to do poorly, because then I'm rooting against the best interests of America. So I have to hope that he can do a competent job. Like, that's it. I'm not saying he's going to be great. I'm not saying that she's great. I'm not saying that all of my elected officials are wonderful and what I hope, but I can't root against the best interests of my people. And at times, that means this person that is in power has to be able to do a competent job. So I need to pick the person that's going to do a competent job.
But what if, so we have an instance right now where the person isn't doing a competent job?
I don't see how you look at the job that he's doing and say, oh, he's like, that's the thing. This is almost if he wins, this is y'all really just don't care, because it's right in front of your face. It's not like when Bush ran against Gore, right? Like, I remember that. You could make arguments. They were bad arguments, but you could make them, right? About who would be competent, who would do a good job. Okay.
Yeah, we're on another level. We're on another planet. We're on another strategy here with this.
Like, that's the thing. Like, we've moved so far from we can have this civil discourse, and you have people telling white supremacists to stand by. You have people forcibly sterilizing people at the border. You have children being separated. You have you have taser shields and no PPE. So you can't look at this dystopian reality and go, I mean, he does make some good points about taxes, though. Like, no, he doesn't.
But do you think that goes back to that idea, so that you mentioned earlier about that lack of that ability to persevere, like you've never had to persevere? So it's always been in my best interest. This country has always operated for me. So even when we haven't someone who is not competent and is not ethical in office, this country still operates in my best interest. So I don't have to worry about the things that you and I necessarily have had to worry about and always have to worry about.
And that's 100% it, because you're alone in those voting booths.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
People are going to tell their internet persona is one thing.
Mm-hmm.
Go to that voting booth.
Yep.
A lot of them are doing another. It's performative. It's virtue signaling. It's I believe this, but he said he's going to keep the suburbs white, y'all.
So what do you say? So I probably have some people who are listening to this that would say that if a vote for Trump shows me that you are yourself racist. Would you agree or disagree with that?
I think it's yes and. Because a vote for him, and I want to be very intentional. That's why I'm pausing, because I think that's simplistic.
There's more nuance there. Absolutely.
But it's so like, who do we want to be? At the end of the day, when you look in the mirror, who do you want to be? Is this who we are? If you vote for him and you can look in the mirror and say, I am a good person, and he represents good people, then we must not have a clear definition of what that means. If you are okay with 200,000 people dying, man, like, come on. Like, at a certain point, like, we've reached some points where it's not even political anymore. And like, that's why I struggle sometimes to be like, well, if you vote for him, you're a racist. You're a bad person. Because I have worked for some people that were racist. They were 60, they were 40, they were 30, and they were racist. And then I broke it down, so I was like, yo, that's racist. And if you say that again to me, like, this is your one chance to get educated. The next time, we're fighting. You're a bad person. Like, you're a bad person because it means that you are okay with people just dying. It means that you are okay with people just being killed. It means that you are okay with
lies, with the incessant lies. You are okay with calling, with Black and brown people dying on the streets with little regard, with calls for law and order.
You're okay with the very worst of us being on public display.
Yeah.
And
not only being on public display, elevated.
And not being acted on, because that's the thing. And I remember this was the point I wanted to make. We treat president like emperor. When would you remember, president is the leader of that party. What party do I want to be a part of? Because, thank you. You see what the Republican Party is with him. I have friends who are die-hard Republican, and yes, they are my friends because they are old school fiscal conservative Republicans. And I told one of them one day, I was like, if you're a fiscal conservative Republican, you do realize that means you should be for this. And when we talked about it, he was like, oh crap, I think you just got me to vote for like single payer healthcare. Like, it makes sense fiscally. But he said, I can't vote for him because that is not the type of Republican I am. And I have to look in the mirror and realize I may care about tax cuts. I may care about small businesses. And in my heart of hearts, he's like, but I do not believe in that. And I cannot vote on party lines. So it's like, who do you want to be? Who represents candidates that are in your best interest? Sure, Joe Biden may not be interesting to you, but AOC is. And Joe Biden brings in money to support those down ballot candidates. Sure, Joe Biden may not be the most interesting person to you, but Stacey Abrams is, and in his party, she'll be able to run a larger platform. We love throwing the squad out there and Rashida Tlaib and everyone else. But when we look at a candidate, when we look at people who said, hey, if we get in, I can work with this. I can do more with this. Yeah, but I don't like how you talk to me. Who do we want to be?
Yep.
Like,
I would even take it a step further and say, thinking about the Bernie Bros, right? Which one of these candidates is most likely going to give you access to what you want? Is it going to be Joe Biden or is it going to be President Trump? And so to not have your voice heard, because I've heard a lot of Bernie Bros say they're not voting.
But a lot of them also voted for 45 in the last one when Bernie didn't get it. And so that is what we're talking about, proximity to whiteness. I don't get to opt out.
Mm.
I don't get to say like, I really liked Bernie, but he didn't get it. So I'm going to vote for this white guy that's a white nationalist now because I don't like the very qualified white woman that won. No, that's not a choice.
Mad at the party. So the Bernie bros were mad at the party because they felt like the party usurped Bernie, and it did, and the party did do.
And also, he lost. No. Like, and that's the thing. Let's go back and really look at it. And I've talked with my friends who like Bernie bros. He lost. Y'all went to caucuses.
Yeah.
Y'all didn't go vote for him. Y'all didn't show up. And like that was the thing. And he even had at one point had to say like, and so that was also on him in that election because he kept it going. He kept stoking those flames, and that's why I was actually really impressed with him.
But the Democratic Party did some underhand stuff in the back.
They did.
Yeah. So
they did. But the flips, and so like I'm not again. I'm just not because I remember it how I remember it, and but I also remember they were saying, "Will you commit to fundraising for down ballot candidates as well?" And that was a thing that he wouldn't commit to do, and that's part of. You are not just voting for president, you are voting for the down party candidate. So how can I support someone that is actively saying, I'm not gonna raise money for them? Dude, so what if you win if we don't have enough votes?
Yes.
Like, did we not watch Hamilton? You don't have the votes. Like,
Exactly. I was telling my students this week, like, to just educate themselves on like go and the people who are right next to you, look at the judges in your area, look at their voting record, and like go, you're voting up and down the ballot. We have to. It's no longer, I remember my first couple of times voting and I was like, ooh, that name sounds cute. I'll vote for them. Ooh, that's a woman. I'll vote for them. I was like, oh, I don't have that luxury. I don't have that luxury. Like that's me throwing my vote away. So ensuring that everybody knows who they're voting for and what their ideals are.
Yeah. So I think like, but that's the thing. I was very impressed with when Bernie realized that he couldn't win this year. And look, we can talk about the sexism implied in that too.
Yes.
Because when he realized that he couldn't beat Joe,
yep,
it was time to bring the party together, right?
Yep, that's true. Yep.
That's a conversation for another day, because what that did let everyone do is, okay, Bernie, let's work with you here. We need to get the horses together. The stakes are high. When Hillary Clinton literally said, y'all don't know the things that I'm privy to. If he wins, we're in trouble. And like, just said it plain. It's like, I get intel briefings. We are both presidential candidates, but I'm also
everything she said has come to pass. Everything she said has come to pass.
Oh, she stood in front of the country and said, I read my intel briefings. Like presidential candidates, when you make it to this level, we get intel briefings. I am a former Secretary of State. I get intel briefings. I read them.
He was Russia's. She told us basically he was a Russian pawn. She told us.
But told you, he is financially compromised.
Yep.
These things, and someone pointed out, having significant financial debt is a good way to get your security clearance revoked because you are compromised. Like if you owe too much money, they will revoke your security clearance to a level because you could be like leveraged into giving up information. You're like, she really just sat here and said, y'all, I read these things.
Yep. She been told us.
Yeah.
And like, I think I kind of go back to what's happening in Kentucky with the Breonna Taylor case, right? Like that to me is emblematic of our complete and utter need to vote up and down a ballot, because we look at what the AG is doing, we look at what the mayor and we see the absolute need to, because that's systemic, right? Those policies happen on that level, and the AG can bring a case without
anything.
Homicide.
Anything.
Yep.
Yeah, but I think so if we're giving a message about voting, look, you need to know who's running. And you need to do, like, it sounds so bad to tell people, do your civic duty. But like, do your civic duty. Like, why are we out here trying to, okay, look, you want the rights and responsibilities and the freedoms and all that. Do your civic duty. Go do your job. Yep. And again, like, I love Twitter and I hate Twitter. So it's why I'm not on it anymore. But when Twitter wins, and somebody was like, all somebody said was, man, I'm not really excited about Joe Biden. So I was like, well, you better find something to get excited about. And he was like, hey, you ain't excited about that hourly job you got, but you clock in every day, right? That's
for the win.
Right there.
For the win. Twitter for the win always.
It's like, look, I may not be excited about it, but I'm going to do my job.
Exactly.
And I don't know why, but I feel like, why have we gotten away from that idea that, hey, sometimes you just got to do your job. And that's what we didn't get across with Hillary, is what I don't think we're getting across with Joe, is at a certain point, I'm not, like, we don't even tell our kids all the time, hey, I'm going to make this thing you got to do. This medicine is disgusting, but it will make you feel better. And I know, like, like there. It was like, why do we always have to say, oh, I don't want to call it disgusting? It's like, no. This thing that you're going to do right now may not feel like it's going to help in the long run. But I need you to do it because it is the responsible thing to do. You want to be an adult? Be an adult. Do your job. Like, go vote for the people that are next to you. Go vote for the people that are dying in Cook County Prison of COVID because someone bungled the response. Go vote for the fact that we can't really leave the country because everybody's like, y'all dirty. And if you do come in here, don't touch nothing because y'all got that virus.
Yeah.
Like, we go vote because we pulled out of the World Health Organization and everyone is like, that is beyond confusing. Go vote because we have a president that is promoting extremism domestically and abroad. Go vote because there is just another report of white nationalists infiltrating the FBI and local police offices. You don't get to say, oh, well, it's not cool. Go do your job.
Yep. And it might be hard because I keep having dreams. Man, I might cut this out of video, but I keep having dreams that of like after the election, like chaos. Mm-hmm. Like, I seriously am kind of nervous about what's gonna happen. Either way.
I think
we have to be prepared. I say that because I feel like we got to be prepared for that.
I feel that, but the thing that comes to mind is it's also that like bit of that thought exercise. If we have to be prepared, what are we being prepared for? I know election night, we probably won't know who won. Mm-hmm. But so what am I going to be doing to facilitate the structures of our democracy still? So I'm already planning guided meditation for people. I'm already planning like, hey, we're gonna do some teach-ins. We're still gonna talk about it because we need to make sure that no matter what, we are holding on to our foundations. And so I think like that's something that we all have to think about. Maybe you and me do, like, let's hop on, let's get some people and we can do a talk through, like we can do our own election coverage. Let's do our own election coverage.
That's what we're gonna do.
Yes, let's do it live.
Let's do it live.
Yup.
Okay, me and you.
Me.
Awesome.
I bet we could get like 2 more people and we can have some fun.
Let's do it. Let's make it. Oh my God.
But see, like, that's our thing. How do we keep our, like, how do we?
I'm so excited. Okay.
Yes. I'm excited. Look, I'm gonna get my TV in the back, have like my election map going on. But like, because that's the thing. How do we bring all of this wisdom and enthusiasm and hope that we have to it and make sure that like we don't have people just sitting there going, oh, well, he's going to win. No. So what? Like, let's fight. Oh, Joe Biden won. We got to give up. That don't matter because we still, like, if Joe Biden wins, we still have to prepare for a transfer of power that they are not saying they're going to do peacefully. Okay. Yeah. How do we stay informed about historically what that
looks like? Yep. What that has looked like. Yep.
And if Joe Biden loses, okay, how do we resist despair and get ready for the next fight, knowing that it just got so much harder. Like
Yep.
we don't, like we get to rest, we get to feel sad, but then we also have to be empowered. And so
Yeah, we
like
can't live in fear. We can't live in fear before it or after it. And I think that my dreams are a manifestation of fear that I need to kind of work out for
but
myself.
it's also healthy because
Yeah.
you should be afraid.
Mm.
Like it's an unknown. Like I'm afraid. I can't say I have. I'm gonna be real with you. I can't say I haven't been having those dreams too.
Mm-hmm.
I can't say that I may not ask my mom to take Mimi that night just in case I do need to be a medic and run out and go. I can't pretend.
Yeah.
But
No,
what I can do is say I am preparing for the most positive outcome that I can act in.
no, that's good stuff. Okay, I'm gonna, because I've kept you a long time, but I want to ask you this one last question. So, young people, and because I work as educators, we always like to look to them as the future. They've been the harbingers of revolution. What do you think the road to revolution looks like for young people?
I think the road looks like prepare that there is a road. I think we got really excited when we saw the like when we saw people buying out Trump tickets and stuff and like empty. It was funny, but then we turned on them again. Like it happened to millennials, right? And now millennials are doing it to another generation, and we forget freedom is a constant struggle. It's not just like you do one thing and then we're all free, everything's great. No, it's sustained and persistent. So like, what does it look like for them? Keep reading, keep laughing, keep doing the work that you're doing, but also realize we're in this for the long haul. Mm-hmm. Like, and I think you're watching people who are doing this work become a little grizzled. Like even the younger ones are like, oh, I thought if I did this for like, this long, mm-hmm. we would win. It's like, mm-hmm. we're preparing, like, but we're getting setbacks and we're losing. And I think that's the other thing. We're constantly trying to be so positive about it that we're like, oh, no. This isn't a setback. It is. We're losing. But guess what? We haven't lost. We haven't fallen into despair and hope. And I think any good general, any good fighter would tell you, I lost this one. I didn't lose the whole thing. And so, like, I would validate those feelings of, we lost this one. We didn't lose the whole thing. We need to prepare for the next thing. We need to feel bad today and keep going. Mm-hmm. We need to know that, like, we're not in it alone and we're not done.
That's good. When you were talking about it, it reminded me of that's kind of why I love Stacey Abrams, because she was like, yeah, I didn't get this one, but guess what? That don't count me out. Don't count me out. And she has, and I believe she's going to do even greater things than she has. Okay, my rapid fire questions for you. What are you reading, or what do you suggest we read right now?
Right now, I'm reading Feminism is for Everybody. What do I suggest you read? The Vanishing Half by Brit, Bennett.
Ooh, why?
It is a phenomenal book. It's gotten recommended to me by one of my best friends, and I think that right now we are in a great place for some amazing fiction.
Awesome. What is something that you want to unlearn yourself?
That my masculinity is attached purely to my physical prowess or appearance. I think that, especially with this Audre Lorde book on feminism that I'm reading now, I realize the role that, like, your, like, not being comfortable in your body extends to men too. And I don't think we ever talk about that. And so I'm sure you've heard me say in the past too, like one of my great refrains is, God made me smart, not pretty. and so, but it was like, I'm starting to realize, like, the impact that self-deprecating humor can have on us, right?
Yeah. What's your hope for the world?
That we can move towards a space where we can disagree without being disagreeable. Yeah. Try and hold on to that one. I think sometimes when we talk about, like, oh, well, we need to have different opinions, like, definitely. But I live now by the James Baldwin. It's like, we can disagree unless what we're disagreeing about essentially is my basic humanity. Like, no, And that's what disagreeable is to me. Like, if you are telling me that like racism is okay, you're just a bad person. Like, you're just a reprehensible person and you are disagreeable and I don't want you here.
Absolutely. Okay. So give us the name of the book again.
The Vanishing Half by Bennett.
Oh, no, I'm sorry. Your book. The book that.
Oh, You Do What You Can.
Okay.
And it is edited by Fannette Jones. It is amazing. We have a great collection of work. We have high school students, college students, professors, everyone. Like, it's beautiful. There's artwork in there too.
I was about to say, I loved the artwork.
I still tear up when I read it because I'm like, it's just so, it's so raw.
Yeah.
Like, it really is.
Well, thank you, Jordan.
Thank you for having me as always, dear.